The huge news of the week here in New Zealand is the 3 fires in the Mackenzie Basin since August that have been ravaging 50 homes/structures and over 5,000 hectares of vegetation. Federated farmers are saying that the mismanagement of conservation land is behind this. This latest fire that began 3 a.m. I believe Sunday morning. By Monday, it had burnt down 4,600 hectares, of which nearly 2,000 was conservation land. So that flow-on effect into private land and livestock loss as well as homes. There's 11 helicopters and 8 ground crew currently ongoing fighting the fires around the Lake Ōhau village. Federated Farmers High Country Chair Rob Stokes is being quoted on farmersweekly.co.nz that this negligent management of conservation land is to blame on DOC. Joining us now is local farmer and previous High Country president for Federated Farmers Simon Williamson and media spokesperson. You sick of media yet, Simon?
It's not my everyday job, Sarah.
Oh, but you are certainly a good person when it comes to getting a honest portrayal of what is happening on the ground. We are Tuesday evening. What has progressed, and before we get into who's to blame, what's things looking like as of tonight?
From what I gather, Sarah, there was quite a heavy shower of rain up there today. The fire had burnt itself out going up the hill pretty much into the shingle, and from what I gather, most of it's extinguished now.
So heading out, but in terms of spreading out, in the basin, are we seeing any further continuation?
Well, just luckily it can't go too far much further into the basin because it's been developed, and originally where Solid Energy decided to grow biofuel but never actually grew any biofuel, at least they took the pine trees out and made it into pasture in the end. So luckily further down there's irrigation and there's good fire breaks in there now that'll stop it going any further. But
the mainstream media are talking about the extensive damage to over 50 homes and structures in that village. And watching Mayor Gary Kircher this morning was heartbreaking. He's just as frustrated as Federated Farmers and pointing all fingers at Eugenie Sage around the source of this outbreak being this mismanagement of dockland. For those who are unaware of the years and years of concern building up to this point, can you paint that picture for us?
Well, we've been really concerned about this for a long time, Sarah, and the Crown have been, even before tenure review, but through the tenure review process, have taken in hundreds of thousands of hectares of ground and just taken it out of farming production. So all of that ground now, in the last 10 or 15 years, it was all grazed originally. It's all got introduced grasses in it. A lot of it's been oversown. So it's never going to go back to its natural state, especially in high rainfall areas. So it's just creating a huge fuel loading underneath it, waiting for this to happen, which was inevitable, and it'll keep happening. We just can't get through to them that they're going in a completely opposite direction to the rest of the world.
This idealism that we are going to take New Zealand back to pre-human state from a nature perspective is too far gone, is what you're saying, and leading to some of these fuel loading situations around conservation land. How do you take these comments where Eugenie Sage has come out today saying that farmers are just wanting free feed?
Well, I saw her yesterday and she said, we want free grazing. Yet I said to her that, I lease a piece of ground off the Department of Conservation and it cost me $6,000 a year to run 60 cows. And she said, oh, that's rather expensive, isn't it? So I don't think the Minister has much idea really of what happens on conservation estate. She's answerable to a really left-wing party, so she'll never be able to make decisions anyway. But in the meantime, they have to be held accountable, and there's going to be more and more of these fires. And some of these valleys that they skite about closing up are going to be massive fire risks. The Ahuriri Valley, if a fire like that got going in there with no development to stop it, it would go right through to Naseby.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, because I do remember those times, as do you very well, Simon, when they locked up the likes of Ahuriri, and you talk of to the likes of Ross Ivy and the grazing management that's going on to keep wilding pines under control. What is the current state of these Helen Clark purchased properties 2020 as opposed to the farming days that we remember in the early 2000s?
Well, in a 60-inch rainfall where, it's been farmed for 150 years of semi-development, it'll never, ever go back to being its natural state. Introduced grasses, cocksfoot timothy, the staple of red clover and white clover will always outdo native plants. And the simple fact that they grow up, do their thing and die down and smother everything underneath them. And that's why grazing is such an important tool in those areas, and it helps it helps the biodiversity underneath it. The Americans have found that out. The Australians have found that out in the last couple of years with their fires. They've changed direction completely again. The English have been doing that for years and actually paying people to graze that country that was set aside. Okay,
so we are in the throes of a week and a half going into an election. There's currently a leaders' debate going on for the third time right now live. Simon, for another 3 years of this particular ideology, what does the high country look like if these types of grazing management cannot continue, and we do have that climatic risk only become more and more?
Well, hopefully, we won't have the same government that we've got now, because they're not doing anything about it. And if the Greens get back in, it'll be amazing. They haven't done anything while they've been in power. The coalition doesn't seem to have worked at all well, does it? But as for going forward, what happens, it'll be a disaster. There will be a lot more of these fires. There'll be lives lost. They're encouraging people to go back into all of these conservation areas. There will be, and just by the nature of having people in there, you're going to end up with fire. So I don't know who's going to pay for it. Are the Department of Conservation going to stump up and pay for it? Are they going to pay for the 50-odd houses that got burnt at Ōhau Village? Who's going to pay for all this stuff?
Yeah, avoidable risk, and it'd be interesting to see where the insurance companies end up landing on this, because of is it technically a natural disaster when we've built ecosystems in these types of environments, and with I don't know, what was it like today with the strong northwest winds we had here in Canterbury? I took one look out the window today, Simon. I thought, shit, you wouldn't want to spark in those Port Hills today, and people are just wanting to climb into living in the country. Yet they're not thinking about the fire risk burden of where they're living.
And that is the whole. But councils have to take a responsibility over this as well. They had to have water mains, but a water main's no good to you at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're so isolated. Now, there is houses up there that had elaborate irrigation schemes with 2 horsepower petrol motors that they left going, and it saved their houses. They had grass around their houses. They had sprinklers going. It burnt their downpipes, but it didn't burn their houses down.
Oh, it's an absolute worry. And Federated Farmers High Country Committee, all you got to do is keep banging on that door. And, where we end up post-election is another thing, and I'm sure, Simon, in all your years in that seat, you'd probably be happy to hand that baton over to Rob Stokes.
Oh no, look, it's a really interesting job, and you're at the coalface. You get a chance to talk to these people and hopefully make a difference. It's just frustrating when you've been doing it for years and years, and my predecessors, and nothing seems to be happening. They're not taking any notice. And what does it take for them to change their mind on this? And we're not talking about grazing all conservation land. but the majority of it that came out of, they call it stewardship land, that can be grazed for a number of reasons. And all you're doing is taking that fuel loading out of underneath it, you're sparsely grazing it, and it won't stop fire, but when fire does go through it, it doesn't damage everything underneath it, including the biodiversity.
Oh, Simon, it constantly just makes me a heavy heart. Wonderful, optimistic, innovative ideas here on Sarah's Country, but the frustration at dealing with people who haven't worked the land, don't understand what it's like day in and day out is extremely weird. Walking beside you here on Sarah's Country. Simon, you've got young children. What do you actually take that time, go out and spend time with them in the school holidays, and not just grubbing thistles and shifting water aces like my old man did?
Yeah, no, there's a bit of that goes on too, but no, the kids love it. They're at that age now where they're mad on hunting and fishing, and they love getting out and amongst that country. And it's easy for them. They grow up with an understanding of what happens, but I just find it really frustrating when you're dealing with people that, I use the example of if you had toothache, you wouldn't go to a mechanic to get your tooth out, would you? And these people don't listen to the people that know about it.
Very valid quote. I might reuse that if that's all right, Simon. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on Sarah's Country. Simon Williamson there from Glenbrook Station in the Mackenzie Basin, giving us a bit of an understanding of the realities of these Mckenzie fires around Lake Ōhau.
This is Sarah's Country.